In this video, I'll give you an overall review of Exoticca Travels Ecuador 360 Cities and Santa Cruz Island Tour. Right from the get-go, things were easy and hassle-free. When we arrived in Quito, the capital of Ecuador, someone was waiting at the airport holding a sign that read Exoticca. We were then taken to a fancy hotel where we had the rest of the day to spend on our own. One thing I really like about Exoticca is how well-rounded the company is. We're not just seeing architecture in big cities, but we're learning about the people and their culture, as well as seeing beautiful national parks, animals, volcanoes, and farmland. Our guide Anibal really did his best to show us as much of the country as possible, and you can feel the pride he had of his country while doing so. Since we hit a lot of places, going all across Ecuador, the itinerary showed long driving days, 8 hours to be exact. But let me tell you, even though it may have taken 8 hours to get from Quito to Banos, we made plenty of pit stops along the way. We did get a chance to hike all the way to the bottom of Highlands crater, and for $10 US, we were able to take a horse back up. By the way, did you know that the currency they use in Ecuador is the US dollar? The elevation at the top of the crater is 12,841 feet above sea level. So if you're prone to altitude sickness, I recommend getting a prescription of acetylcholine or Diamox before you come. And that's not even the highest elevation you'll hit on this trip either. You could also get some coca leaves while in Quito, but those may not be enough to do the trip. Banos is a town known for the Virgin Mary appearing at one of its waterfalls. And that waterfall happens to be right next to some natural hot spring pools where a lot of the Ecuadorians come to visit. Virgin Mary, hot springs, sounds like the perfect place for a meditative retreat, right? Well, not so much. Neon lights, party buses, and discotheques are what you'll find here. Don't get me wrong though, it's still a very charming town to visit. We ate at the Leprechaun Beer Garden, which I highly recommend.
I seriously just got a dozen beautiful roses for $2.50. Look at that. And they smell divine.
At our guide's recommendation, we tried melcocha, a delicious sugarcane taffy that tastes like bit of honey candy, made right in the shops of Banos. And we also tried some sanduche, an alcoholic drink also made of sugarcane. I made smaller, separate videos of everything we did in Ecuador, so please subscribe to my channel and check out my other videos as well. On the way to the Amazon jungle, we took a couple adventurous stops. The first was a cable car ride at TREEDY'S that went high over the river to Bridal Veil Falls. Next was a fun stop to Mira Mira for an adrenaline rush swing over the Amazon Canyon next to the Rio Pastaza. The Amazon jungle tour wasn't really what I had expected. It was cute, but a bit touristy for me. Children from the village painted our faces with a natural plant dye and performed a dance for us, but we really didn't get to see animals or venture deep into the jungle. This was partly due to a heavy downpour, which cut our Amazon adventure short, but also since we were in the secondary jungle, basically on the outskirts of the real Amazon. But missing out on the second part of the Amazon was quickly forgotten when we hiked down to the majestic Pelon del Diablo waterfall. The next day is when both our driver Carlos and our guide Anibal really shined. The sky was overcast and the fog was quickly moving in, so they pulled the bus over to the side of the road for us to get a glimpse of Chimborazo, the highest volcano in Ecuador, before it became completely invisible. Then as we continued driving, they pulled over again when they spotted some llamas on the side of the road. And yet again as we passed by carrot farmers. And even again as we searched for the elusive vicuñas, the type of llama cashmere comes from. Again, don't let the long driving days bother you, because with this trip's itinerary, there were plenty of stops and a lot to see along the way, including this small indigenous village where you could see the local women spin yarn straight from the alpaca wool. A stop at the very first church of Ecuador wasn't the only attraction along the way to Guayamote. We also got to experience how the locals cook and eat the guinea pigs, also known as cuy cuy. On the way to Cuenca, we stopped by another indigenous town called Alasi and got to walk around their local market where I bought a very cool, authentic Ecuadorian hat, the same type that the indigenous women wear. This and my ponchos were my absolute favorite purchases of the trip. And we visited Inca Perca ruins, the best preserved Inca ruins in Ecuador. I'm really glad the trip included Cuenca, the charming town where expats flock to. When you're here, you'll see why. Narrow cobblestone streets, beautiful churches, delicious cafes, 4 rivers, and even a district called Gringo Land. While here, I recommend climbing to the upper towers of the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, where you'll get sweeping views of the town below. Our guide took us to a local produce and wet market, where the locals eat just about every single part of the animal. We also went to the Panama hat making factory. Did you know that Panama hats are actually from Ecuador? On the way to Guayaquil, we stopped at Parque Nacional Caja, Tres Cruces, which is 13,651 feet above sea level. This is the westernmost point of the continental divide in South America, where you can get phenomenal views of the many lakes and mountains. It also marks the divide between the drainage basins flowing toward the Pacific Ocean and those flowing east. In Guayaquil, if you do only one thing, I recommend going to Parque Seminario, a place where you can find massive land iguanas just hanging out with the pigeons. Next stop, the Galapagos, and boy was this amazing. Anibal made sure we were safely checked into our flight before saying his farewells to us. The bay tour of the Galapagos is included in this trip, and for the rest of the time, you'll be on your own. You absolutely do not need to pre-book any excursions before you get here, since you'll find plenty of tour companies lining the streets of downtown Santa Cruz. Here you can island hop, snorkel, and scuba dive. I highly recommend happy hour at the Red Tuna restaurant. It sits right on the water next to the docks where the boats come in. I could just stay there for hours watching the fishermen bring in their huge catches of tuna and other fish of the day, or just watching shark after shark and stingrays swim by, or even sea lions playing and twirling in the water, and beautiful birds all around, all while sitting there enjoying a beer. Here's an insider tip. Hike over to Playa Tortuga Bay early in the morning, before 9 o'clock. Walk down the beach, then take a right to the lagoon. And if you're lucky, you may be able to spot a baby hammerhead shark swimming next to the mangroves. All in all, this tour was absolutely amazing. Day after day was packed with activities that really give a full picture of what life is like in Ecuador. We hit all the major sites, learned about different cultures within the country, saw the various art forms and architecture styles. We learned how chocolate was made and visited national parks, ancient ruins, and beautiful landscape. And being in the Galapagos was like a whole separate trip on its own. The only downfall of the trip was the flight. We flew on Avianca, which is an airline I will never fly again. An international flight with no food or water? Unbelievable. Even with the crappy airline, I still give this trip a 5 out of 5 stars. That's how good it was.